All right, our top focus right now, the United States secondary tariffs on Indian goods. Remember, it's a steep 25% penalty over Russian oil imports. It's going to be kicking in today, and it takes the total tariff burden to 50%. The Trump administration claimed the move is in response to threats from the Russian Federation, but India appears to be collateral damage in this continuing geopolitical crossfire. The impact could be severe. 55% of India's $87 billion merchandise exports to the US are now, as we speak, at risk. India is the only country that has been penalized for importing Russian oil. China, Europe, remember, they continue similar trade without facing tariffs in this way. On the other hand, you have the Indian Prime Minister Modi, who's doubled down on the Make in India mission. He's spotlighting rare earth minerals and domestic manufacturing in this moment. Now, the government has also already made it clear that India will protect its national interests first. The PMO's also convened a high-level meeting to shield Indian exporters and explore countermeasures. We're just going to take you very quickly to what it is that US President Donald Trump had to say.
आत्मनिर्भर भारत के अभियान को हम सब आगे बढ़ाएं, वोकल फॉर लोकल बने, स्वदेशी ये हमारा जीवन मंत्र बनना चाहिए दोस्तों। गर्व से स्वदेशी की तरफ चल पड़ो। भारत सरकार ऑटो इंडस्ट्री के लिए रेयर अर्थ मैग्नेट की शॉर्टेज से जुड़ी कठिनाइयों के प्रति भी सजग है। इस दिशा में देश के सामर्थ्य को बढ़ाने के लिए हमने नेशनल क्रिटिकल मिनरल मिशन भी लॉन्च किया है। आज भारत की मेक इन इंडिया इस यात्रा में एक नया अध्याय जुड़ रहा है। आज से भारत में बने इलेक्ट्रिक व्हीकल्स 100 देशों को एक्सपोर्ट किए जाएंगे।
I'm talking to a very terrific man, Modi of India. And I say, what's going on with you in Pakistan? Then I'm talking to Pakistan on trade. I said, what's going on with you in India? And the hatred was tremendous. Now, this has been going on for a hell of a long time, like sometimes with different names for hundreds of years. But I said, what's going on? I said, I don't want to make a trade deal. No, we want to make a trade deal. I said, no, I don't want to make a trade deal with you. You're going to have a nuclear war. You guys are going to end up in a nuclear war. And that was very important to them. I said, call me back tomorrow, but we're not going to do any deals with you, or we're going to put tariffs on you that are so high. You were there, Howard, right? Yeah. You're going to put tariffs on you that was so high, I don't give a damn, your head's going to spin. You're not going to end up in a war. Within about 5 hours, it was done. It was done. Now, maybe it starts again. I don't know. I don't think so, but I'll stop it if it does. We can't let these things happen.
Okay, two colleagues joining us right now to bring us more context on this story. They've been covering this story for us as it's played out in the last few days. Our colleague Pallavi Ghosh and our colleague Siddhant Mishra both join us this morning to bring us more context. Pallavi, the tariffs kicking in from today, we want to understand from you first, the exports of low-margin, labor-intensive goods. These are the sectors that are going to be most hit. Gems, jewelry, textile, apparel, everything from that to shrimp is going to be affected. Can you just walk us through how the government is predicting this will impact and what measures they're putting in place?
Yes, two things. There's an area of concern, labor-intensive products, for example, carpets, gems, jewelry. We have a substantial amount of carpet exports to America. Shrimps, fisheries, because Andhra Pradesh, Kerala, Odisha, the mainstay of the economy is also the shrimps and cultivation. And apart from that, of course, is textiles, because that's a labor-intensive small sector, medium sector, cottage industry. So these are the worrying signs, Toya. But it's not that all of this has come in as a kind of a shock or a surprise. There have been multiple backroom talks, negotiations, and strategies which were being worked out. And in fact, as late as yesterday evening at around 4:30 is when the principal secretary in the Prime Minister's office also spoke with many of the concerned ministry secretaries, trying to work out some kind of a package as far as exporters are concerned. The problem over here is that what about those products which have already been shipped? And of course, there are those logistical reasons why we were given some amount of time. But now with the closure of the postal system, for example, now it's been kicking in by midnight, it's already been settled. That worry was there about the exporters with what is going to have their products which are ready, packed to ship. So there could be some kind of a credit package, which we reported yesterday, Toya, which is being worked out for them. I would say it could come as early as in the cabinet meeting today, or it could come up sometime next week. That is as far as exporters go. But I think the bigger and the larger challenge and a long-term solution would be to look for alternative markets, and that is what we have been doing. Last night, for example, I reported that how the Commerce Minister, Mr. Piyush Goyal, met with his South African counterpart. Deep messaging that we are not going to leave the BRICS summit. BRICS is important for us. But again, South Africa is important for channelizing our energy needs, for becoming a market for our pharma products, for textiles, so on and so forth. So whether they are small countries, big countries, Fiji Islands, South Africa, Tanzania, Australia, and of course that FTA we signed with UK, our strategy clearly has been, one hand, look for newer markets, look for newer products to be sent out. Dehradun to Dubai, that was one tagline which was used by the Commerce Ministry when they spoke about apples, for example, from Dehradun to be exported, dates, all of that. That is one. And second, some kind of a credit line or a package or scheme for our exporters, so that at least that acts as a buffer or protection for the immediate concerns.
Okay, Pallavi, stay with us. Let's go over to our colleague Siddhant to understand. Siddhant, walk us through what the India-US relationship looks like in this moment. We just played out the most recent reaction from the US President Donald Trump, where he'd said, and I quote, "We're not going to do any deals with you. We're going to put tariffs on you that are so high your head's going to spin." Language like that tonnage, how is the External Affairs Ministry, the center, seeing this right now?
Well, look, India-US relationship is beyond personalities, Toya, and this is very important to highlight at this point in time. And in fact, yesterday only we reported that how there was a 2+2 official level dialogue which took place between India and United States. In fact, both sides discussed nuclear cooperation in energy, manufacturing, critical minerals, etc., etc. In fact, both sides also discussed Quad, and both sides said that it was a very positive meeting. So this was the first meeting taking place between India and the United States after August 6th announcement ahead of tariff, a 25% additional tariff coming into effect from today. As far as President Trump's recent statement is concerned, perhaps, Toya, from the very beginning, he has been trying to justify tariff. And in fact, for that, he and his, senior officials in his administration have been saying this, that how President Trump is a peace president. And in fact, he doesn't use weapons. He uses tariff as a tool. So that's their narrative. And in fact, in May, they filed an affidavit in the court saying that how tariff, with the help of tariff as a tool, they could manage to stop a conflict between India and Pakistan. In fact, yesterday, again, he reiterated that how he spoke to Prime Minister Modi, then the Pakistani leadership, and he threatened both of them that there's going to be no trade deal if this conflict continues, and after which the conflict was stopped, etc., etc. As far as Indian government's position on this particular statement of President Trump is concerned, what I have been told is that Indian government position is consistent, that there was no telephonic conversation between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump from April 22nd to 17th of June. On April 22nd, Prime Minister was in Riyadh. on a state visit. At that point in time, President Trump called him to extend condolences right after Pahalgam terror attack. And on 17th of June, there was a conversation when Prime Minister Modi was at G7 summit, and President Trump called him from Washington. So these are the only two conversations, telephonic conversations, which took place between the two leaders. Perhaps, as I said, that President Trump will go to any extent to justify his tariff policy. There's a lot of criticism which his administration is facing because, the prices of commodities are going up. There is a large chunk of people, not just the political class, but the common people also, those who have been opposing this tariff policy, because they feel that this would result in the prices of commodities going up. So in these times, it's very important for his administration to justify his tariff policy, and perhaps this is the reason that at every single press briefing he mentions that how he used tariff to stop war between India and Pakistan, how he's using tariff as a tool and threatening countries that if there's going to be war, conflict, then he will not be signing a trade deal. So, as I said, that this relationship is a relationship of 21st century, consequential relationship, and perhaps both sides are still engaging, are still talking to each other, and this relationship is beyond personalities. Definitely, the policy of the president does have an impact on the relationship, but this relationship is continuing, and 2+2 official dialogue took place yesterday.
Siddhant, thank you. Stay with us, please. Pallavi and Siddhant, both of you, we could just ask you to stay with us. Let's just break this down for you very quickly. First, let's bring to you the sectors that are expected to be the most impacted by this decision. That 50 plus 25 decision. Number one, you have the gems and jewelry sector. They're going to be vulnerable to this. And as you can see, these are all largely labor-intensive sectors that are going to be the most impacted. It is going to be vulnerable to increased tariffs. Let's move on from this now to the next one. Apparel and textiles. This is a sector that relies very, very heavily on exports. Garment exports, for example. Remember, this is where in India, in multiple different states, you have manufacturing houses that are set up. They export out clothing that then gets branded. This could be affected. Shrimp, for example, this is a big sector. So in the last few years, a large amount of US shrimp that is eaten in the United States, actually comes in from India, from Vietnam, a number of other countries. And this is a recent shift. Shrimp will be very, very affected. Organic chemicals. Now, they could face a very, very significant impact because of this move. We'll take you very quickly now, after this, to the next sector, as this sector faces a significant harm. The other is, of course, carpets. Carpets is another very, very labor-intensive sector, and now it's expected that these exports, because of this tariff, will get hit and they're going to become more expensive. Okay, let's take you now from this to what are the sectors that will not be affected by these changes. This is because these are sectors, as we told you already, that are not going to be counted under the 50% tariff. They will not have tariffs imposed on them in this manner. Iron and steel, number one, a sector that will be unaffected. Aluminium and copper, passenger vehicles, light trucks, auto components of all kinds. We know the pharma sector, we know electronics. So by electronics, we mean chips, mobile phones, tablets. These are sectors that will not be immediately affected by this. Okay, let's go back to our colleague to understand more on this. Let's go over to Pallavi to understand more. Pallavi, as this report came out, I just want to understand from you, in the last few hours, there have been some reports that already you have textile units in a few regions, I'll just name them, Tirupur, Noida, Surat, that are halting production. How large scale is that? How worrying is it? Just bring us context.
Yeah, I would not put it as worrying, but I would certainly put it as an area of concern, because that's what government is telling us. Obviously, many of these units, for example, Tirupur is a textile hub. Then you also have, for example, in Noida, in Kanpur, in Lucknow, all of them are textile hubs. Down south, many of them. The reason why the production was always so high is because they were actually catering more than a domestic, they were catering to the international market. Obviously, and a sizable chunk of that was going to America. Now, when that market starts shrinking and becomes difficult to find buyers for their products, they have to slash down on their production. So what government is telling us is it's not that they've halted their production, they've cut down remarkably their production, which is why this credit scheme becomes even more important as far as the textile manufacturers or our exporters are concerned. Look, they all work in a chain. So they, for example, if I can break it down very simply, a factory or a textile unit in Tirupur meets up with some orders coming in from America, which is, say, if you want to put it at, say, 1 million, now the order has come down, so they have to cut down the cost. But what about the exporters who are hinging their revenue earning from this particular textile plant in Tirupur? What about the textile plant of Tirupur and the workers over there? So the credit scheme or the credit line which the government is looking at is to immediately kind of protect them and act as a buffer for both the exporters as far as the textile industry.